Welcome back to the Creating Resilience video series. This is the third video in the series. We've talked about the brain, and I've given you the analogy of the brain as the car in the previous two videos. In this video, we're really going to start to talk about what happens in our brain if we have ongoing toxic stress, especially when we're children. Ongoing toxic stress when we have a lifestyle that's very unpredictable. It might be that we are around people and we have heightened emotions. We feel like we are in the fight, flight, or freeze often. It's the adverse childhood experiences that we'll talk about soon in this video series. But toxic stress is when we really don't feel like we have the support and the resources that we need to get through stressful times. And it has a big impact on how our brain is developed, especially as we're children, when all the neurons in our brain are creating these networks that work really strongly throughout the rest of our life. This is our brain when we're in the front seat. This is how our brain typically processes if we are able to have thoughtful responses. So we're observing things and we're inputting all sorts of things that are going on around us in the environment, and we're interpreting those things. Are they harmful? Are they not? And we're just processing all that, coming up with our options really quickly and planning and acting. For example, if I was walking down a street and someone was walking in front of me, and they were looked a little disheveled, perhaps, and their arms are waving around and they're talking in a tone that could be anger. I might start to interpret that and process that. And do I want to go up and ask if they need help? Do I want to jump into a store and put more space between us? What am I going to do? And I'm going to plan and I'm going to act that out. And that's our brain in the front seat. That's our thoughtful response. But if that person turns and I see that there's some sort of danger in the way, then immediately I'm going to jump into my trunk, right? And I'm going to react. I'm either going to run or I'm going to fight or I'm going to pause and freeze for just a moment. But I instinctively go to that express route in order to react very quickly for survival. And that's great. That's perfect. But if that danger is getting kicked in over and over and over again through our life, then what happens is that alarm system is what just becomes the main route. The networks in our brain do not create the pathways that allow processing, evaluation, and planning. I just think it's a really beautiful graphic. So if that person were to turn and they had that weapon, or something that was dangerous, we're going to jump to that. But if that happened every single day or weekly or on a routine basis throughout the day or throughout our life, especially when you're young, it's really going to change the outcome in our brain. Because we've talked about how that thinking brain is where we can use our working memory and where we make decisions and where we have that inhibitory control. And it starts to be created at age 3 to 5, and it gets worked on all the way through early 30s. I still think my brain's working on it, and I'm much later in life than that. But if we have heightened emotions or we're set into that fight, flight, or freeze over and over again, and we're only meant to stay in fight, flight, or freeze for about 20 minutes at a time. So if it's happening over and over again, we know that not only does the thinking brain go offline in that moment, but what research has showed us is that the neural networks in our brain, in that front part of our brain, actually do not become as strong and robust as they should be. And so if we are repeatedly exposed to toxic stress or adversity in our life, our brain development is actually shifted. So think of it this way: the need is in the trunk is safety, and in the back seat is connection. So if we're constantly seeking safety and connection in our life, that's the part of the brain that is going to really be used. They say if it fires together, it wires together. So if this is what's constantly firing in our brain is in the trunk and the back seat, that's what's going to really develop strongest instead of that front seat thinking where we're trying to find meaning in life. We're just kind of in survival mode rather than thriving mode. I think it's really important to think about this not only for your life, but for other people that we encounter, because people that are reacting from their backseat or trunk, they're not necessarily giving us a hard time. Reactive people are having a hard time. And that begins to shift the lens in which we look at people and interact with people. And that's really very important. Our reflection question with this video is think of someone you know who may have or is currently living with a lot of chaos in their lives. Can you recognize when they are in their backseat or their trunk? Think about that one. And then your action step is recognize that people around you might be instinctively reacting rather than thoughtfully responding, and practice what I call Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. Realize that they're having a hard time. They aren't necessarily giving you a hard time. Thank you again for joining me. I hope to see you next time. Enjoy your week and be reflective and put that action thought into practice.